You're listening to She Speaks, a Let Her Speak podcast that celebrates women's fearlessness, resiliency, and readiness to change the world. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Catherine Porth, your host and the founder of Let Her Speak. We live in a world where the ability to take photos are constantly at our fingertips. Yet for many of us, we rarely give ourselves permission to embrace our own beauty and allow someone to take our portrait. Saray Taylor-Roman is a widely celebrated photographer on a mission to help every woman recognize how beautiful she is. This mission stems from a very personal place, which you will hear about more shortly. When Saray and I recorded this interview in April of 2021, there were hints of what was coming next for her and her business. But it wasn't until almost a year later that she truly understood the growth she was going through. You'll be able to hear all about that progression when we catch up with her in our next episode. But first, let's travel back to April 2021 with Saray Taylor-Roman, owner of Taylor-Roman Photography. Welcome, everybody, to our latest episode of the She Speaks series. If you're new here, my name is Catherine Porth, and I am the founder of Let Her Speak. And today I have a phenomenal woman that we'll be talking to. Her name is Saray Taylor-Roman, and she is the owner of Taylor-Roman Portraits. If you have never had a portrait done of yourself or you feel like the camera doesn't love you, Saray is here to tell you that the camera loves everything about you and you're beautiful just the way you are. I'm so happy that you're here with me today, Saray. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Catherine.
Yeah, so I would love for you to talk about the journey that you took from where you saw your life going to ultimately becoming a portrait photographer.
Oh, of course. Yeah, I'll be happy to talk about that. I used to be a high school Spanish teacher. Actually, Spanish is my first language. Originally from Mexico. And I went to school and got a double degree in education and international studies. And so I thought that was going to be what I was going to do for the rest of my life. And I immediately started teaching right out of college. It was a great opportunity. I started teaching locally here in Oak Ridge, and it was an amazing school district. I had a lot of support. And after a few years, I realized, though, that as much as I enjoyed working with kids and teaching them my own language, it was not something that I would see myself doing for the rest of my life. And so I started looking for other opportunities of what I could do. And photography was always something that I loved to do. I think the first time that I had a camera, I was 13, and I just photographed my cat, my friends, landscapes of places we visited. I just didn't think that I could actually do or have a business doing photography. And when I was in college, I got to do 2 courses there. And so I learned in film and I learned to develop my own film, and it was magical. But again, it was just like, okay, this is what you do as a hobby, not necessarily what you do as a business. And so 5 years into teaching, I know that I need to look into something else, but I don't know what that is. And I thought that maybe photography could be it. And so I looked into becoming a wedding photographer. And so I had a few friends locally that were doing that for a living. And I asked them if they needed somebody to come and carry gear or, do some behind the scenes for them or whatever. And several of them took me up on the idea, and I did like 3 or 4. And I soon realized that it was not what I wanted to do. It was a lot of stress. It was long days. And at the same time, what really attracted me to photography was portrait, almost that one-on-one connection that you have with somebody. And so I realized that, wedding's not going to be it. Portrait, I don't know how I can make it work. And when I was still toying with the idea of wedding photography, I was following these photographer in Orange County, California. And she taught a course in this platform that is out of Seattle that is called Creative Live. And so I was just watching that course because I had purchased it, and I was like, you know what, I already did. Just go ahead and finish it. You're going to learn something anyways, even if you don't do wedding photography. And so I was watching it one day, and then there was a legend at the bottom of the screen that said, if you enjoy this instructor, you may also like this other new one that we have coming up. And she specialized in portrait. And so I clicked on it. I watched the trailer, and I was just captured by her personality, by her message, by the fact that she said, if you don't own a photo of yourself that you love, it's not your fault, it's your photographer. And if you want to be a photographer and you want to learn how to photograph everybody and see the best of them through your lens, then this course is for you. And I was just like, oh my goodness, this is what I've been wanting to learn all my life. When I was in college, we went to a photography gallery and as part of our assignment. And, I saw images of people on the walls, and there were some that just almost take your breath away when you look at them, or there's something about them that you want to know more about the person who took it or the person who wasn't in the portrait itself. And so I asked one of the persons there, and I said, hey, why is it that some images, some portraits just take you, and you want to know more about it? And there's some that they have good light, good composition, but they just don't speak to you. And so this guy said, well, that's easy. He said, some people are photogenic and some people aren't. And so if you are lucky enough to photograph a photogenic person, then you're going to have an image that everybody's going to love. And that didn't sit well with me at all. And that's also the reason why I only took 2 photography courses and then I stopped. At that time, when he said that, it brought me back all the way to when I was about 7 years old. And I was at the time, it's that age where you're losing your baby teeth and getting new teeth. And my parents, somebody in Mexico knocked on their door and said, hey, when was the last time you had your family portrait done? And my parents were like, well, the girls were babies. So he's like, well, I'll come back next week. I'll set up in your living room and we'll take family portraits. And my parents were like, that's a great idea. So they did that. Fast forward to 1 week, my mom is like, put us in one of our favorite dresses, and she's doing our hair and getting us ready for the family portrait. And he was going to do some individuals, and I'm the oldest in the family out of my sister and I. And so my mom is like, okay, you're going to go first. And so I went first. I'm a pretty confident child. I think I smiled all the time. And, I don't know if he was having trouble with his camera or whatever. But so he's having some issues, and I'm just sitting there on the stool waiting. And then he's like, okay, we're ready. And, so I smile, and he's like, oh, no, honey. That doesn't look good because I have my front cheeks. And so, suddenly he makes me feel super self-conscious, which is something I had never experienced before in my life. I'm 7. To my parents, a cute kid. And so before that, I have tons of images of myself because I'm also the firstborn. And that day comes through. I make it through the session because I have to. But from then on, I hide. If you look for images of myself in my family albums, moving so fast that the camera can't capture me, because it was those that just couldn't freeze movement, or I'm behind an adult, or I'm looking down, or eventually once I had a camera, I was behind the camera, so I didn't have to be in front of it. And so when that person said, well, some people are photogenic and some people aren't, it reminded me to that point where when my sister came along running, she's like, oh, the cute one of the family's here. And so I was just like, I will never want to make anybody feel the way that I felt that way that day. And so when she said that, and I said, okay, maybe there's some truth to that. And if she can really teach me how to do that, I want to learn that. And so I purchased her course. It was, in 28 days, every day she had an exercise to teach you how to see light, how to see angles, how to just do body dynamics and all of that stuff. And it was great. But I was teaching at the time, full time. And I had just had a daughter. And so my time was like super limited. So instead of doing it over 28 days, I did it over 28 every other Saturdays. And so I got it done. And I was like, you know what? I think I can do this. The most important part was getting to know the person that you're photographing. They're not an object, they're a subject, and the story that you're telling through your lens, and it's not your story, it's their story. And so when you allow people to be comfortable with you, when you allow them to tell you exactly who they are, what they like, what fears they have, then suddenly that space, their inner space becomes open. And you have this little window of time when you can capture that. And so that's basically what she was teaching us. She's like, at the end of the day, you are getting to know the person you're photographing. And when they're able to let their guard down, then you can use everything else that I've taught you to make sure that you are there ready to photograph it. And so that's basically how it started. And so in 2013, that's when I started doing all of this. By the summer of 2014, I had finished taking a sabbatical from school. I took a sabbatical when my daughter was born. So she was going to turn exactly 1 year old the day I went back to school to teach. And I had created a portfolio. I had developed my own website. I didn't know how to do any of this, but I, just followed tutorials on YouTube on how to create your first website, on how to create a pricing menu, on like InDesign or whatever. So I was just like doing every week. I will do one thing different, just so I will have everything for the business. And so, by the summer, I had everything ready. And then I had one more week and then I was going to go back to school. And I said, okay, Saray, you have everything you need to launch this business. And then I got super scared. And I was just like, oh, well, nobody in your family has ever owned a business before. Yes, you have all the infrastructure, but how are you going to go get clients? And then suddenly all of the things that I had done meant nothing because I was terrified of starting. And because I was terrified of starting, I went back to school. And I went back to school and I taught for one whole full year. And as much as I love being with my kids, I had about 100 of them a day and I love interacting with them. It was not anymore what I wanted to do. And so there was this lady who, she was super sweet. I was the dance team sponsor. So I can't dance, but they just needed somebody to make them legal for the school. And so I was that legality person. And this mom, she said, you know what, I've seen your pictures because I didn't tell anybody at school. I said, okay, I don't want anybody at school to know because I don't want them to think that I'm dividing my attention and my effort from the job that actually pays my bills to my maybe side hustle. And second, I don't want to have maybe one of my kids be one of my clients and then they pay me and then they expect maybe a better grade. And so I was just like, I don't want to blur any lines whatsoever. And so nobody at school knew that I was going to be a photographer. And so this mom is friends with a friend of me on Facebook. And she says, I saw through my Facebook friend that you are a photographer and I saw your work and I really like it. And I want you to photograph my daughter and she's in the dance team. And I said, and I was just like, okay, well, she took French. I taught Spanish. I will never have her as a kid, but then at the same time, I was just like, I don't know if I can do this. And so she chased me for like the whole first semester. And I kept putting it off. I would say, yeah, we have a break coming, but I need to grade and I have so much work or whatever. And so finally winter break came And she said, Saray, I really would like you to do this. And so I explained the things, how it worked. I was like, if I tell her how much it is, she's going to say no. And so I was just trying to give her all the reasons why she should not hire me. And the only day that I was available was on New Year's Eve. And so she said yes to everything. And I said, oh my goodness, this is your one chance to see if this is what you've prepared for 2 years to have the opportunity to do this. Because every other person, I didn't charge anything. I just wanted to create a portfolio that I loved, a portfolio that was professional and that was consistent. And I was like, this is like your final test. You're having an actual client this time. And so I walked her through the whole process, which is a little bit different than a lot of people approach photography. Even when I do headshots, I like to get to know the person. I like to get to know who they are, what they do, if they're a professional, who their target audience is, what type of message they're trying to convey. And so we talked about all of that. We talked about wardrobe. We talked about hair and makeup, not because it makes you beautiful, but because a lot of times it's going to allow you to calm down enough so they can show me exactly who you are. And so and she's like, oh my gosh, I've never done anything like this. And now that I explain it to people, some people say, oh, is it like the glam shots? And I was like, yeah, this is like glam shots 2.0. And a lot of times with professional wear instead of feather boas, but it's still it's an experience. And yes, she became my first client. 2 weeks later, she loved every single image that I created. And I had gone to the Small Business Development Center downtown almost for a whole year because I always wanted to make sure that my business plan was right and everything. And so I went to my last meeting, and I asked the instructor, can I take you out to lunch, because I think I'm ready, but I don't, can you just double check everything? And so she did. And she was Laura Overholt, and she was amazing. And she looked through everything, my pricing, my products, my cost of goods, my cost of doing business, everything. She looked at it. She's like, it looks good. She's like, maybe a little bit pricey. Have you done some market research? And I said, no, but I just sold my top pack. And she's like, well, then you're ready to go. And so she, so we did it. And then I was like, okay, I can do this. So everything went live. My website went live. My social media went live, everything. And then I was like, oh, wait a minute. How do I get my next client? And so, then I had to learn marketing and I had to learn sales from that. But that's basically how it all started. It took me about 2.5 years from the moment the idea was born. And I took the first step to the moment that I actually opened for business.
I really, really appreciate that you went through in such detail. Like, this wasn't something that just I decided and then it happened the next day. That most entrepreneur journeys seem like they happened overnight, but they really were years and years in the making. And I know one piece that you talk about from time to time with like different entrepreneur groups specifically is knowing your value and your pricing. Like you mentioned, the woman commented that you're a little bit higher than she might have expected for a photographer in this area. So could you talk a little bit about, the process and both mentally, but also strategically of how you arrived at valuing what you do and the experience that you bring?
Yes. I'll be more than happy to talk about that. I can tell you honestly that I did my pricing. I work with my mentor, who's been a photographer in like 3 different continents. And she said, Saray, this is professional standard. And then I said, but I live in Knoxville. I don't live in LA. I don't live in New York, right? And so that was the immediate thing. And all the buts. And so, and she said, okay, let's do the math. So we started doing the math, and about 20 to 30% of that is going to go to taxes. About 10-20% is going to be cost of goods, cost of doing business. So you're really paying yourself 20 to 30% of everything that you're asking. And then at the time, I knew that I had to replace my teacher's salary because we needed both incomes, my husband's and my income. And my income was the one that was providing at the time also all the benefits. And so if I was not going to have then I was going to have to come up with even more money to cover benefits. Once you start, working on your own, you're responsible for all of that. And so once you do the math, you get a punch in the stomach and it's just a reality check. And you realize that if you're not charging that, you're not going to make it. You may know the statistics, about 50% of businesses that get started don't make it. And in the first 5 years, and then in the next 5 years, other 50% of those just are cut off. And the main reason is budgeting and the fact that they didn't account for money to progress. And so logically, I understood that. But my heart was like, well, who are you to charge that? You went to school for teaching. Your master's degree is also in educational technology, has nothing to do with photography, has nothing to do with anything artistic. You pretty much picked up a camera 2.5 years ago. All of the self-doubt kept creeping up. And for me, it was just like, okay, Saray, you're going to do this. And so when I gave the pricing to my first client, I was expecting her to say no. And I said, okay, if she says no, well, maybe you're not cut out for this. But if she says no, that's it. But if she says yes, what if she says yes? And so she said yes. She's like, I'm only going to buy one image at that price. And I was like, that's fine. I was like, one image is great. I will not make any money because that's going to cover everything that I'm paying for everything else. But, I wanted to have the experience. And it turns out that in the end, she loved all of them. But I feel that to me is do the math. The math doesn't lie. And try to detach that emotion from it. Do all the math, all the numbers. And then once you do the numbers, then work on value. For me, the greatest source of value came in my first 2 years of business, because I was still doing this, not believing or seeing myself as an imposter in a way. Every time that I did networking and people will ask me, oh, well, how long have you been doing this? I hated that question because I had been in business for 1 month, 2 months, 6 weeks, and like maybe 8 months toward the end of the year, but not enough. And I always felt that was a question, like they were questioning, me and my validation as an artist, my validation as a business owner. And I told one of my friends after, and I was telling her, I hate every time they ask me, why do they always ask me that question? And she said, Saray, I think you're seeing it the wrong way. She said, when people ask you that, I don't think that they're questioning whether you're legit or not. She's like, I look at your work and I feel that you have been doing this forever because it's so good. And I think that they just want to know because they're taken and they're like, have you been doing this for 10 years? You look so young at the same time, so she asked me to see it in a different way, and that helped me. But what helped me the most was getting testimonials from my clients. They wrote amazing testimonials where, they talked about how they felt before they came to see me, how they felt throughout the photo shoot, and how everything changed once they saw their images. And once they saw somebody that they wish they saw in themselves, but they really never saw, because every time they saw themselves in the mirror, they heard voices, negative voices about themselves. But then they saw that image and says, no, that's exactly who I want to be. That's exactly. And then their loved ones will see the image and say, oh my gosh, this is exactly who we see every single day. And then, their friends will be like, this is exactly you. She captured your personality. This is exactly who you are, and it's not about like the double chin that we sometimes see or like the different angle, because nobody really sees that. They see us and they see us as a whole. When we look at each other in the mirror, like ourselves in the mirror, we focus on the negatives because it's just us. But when our friends see us, they see the whole package. And so, when they started writing those testimonials, and it was heartfelt, and a lot of them just cry seeing their images and wishing that somebody had captured them this way before, but nobody had done it. That's what gave me value. And I said, this is what you're meant to do. This is what people keep paying for. And not only that, they recommend you to friends and family and even their frenemies, right? Because they really appreciate this experience. Even though I thought it was expensive, every single one of my clients understood the value and paid it happily, And so for me, it was getting there. I did the math, I put it out there, and then I had the service and the product to back it up. And then the clients decided that it was valuable, and they let me know that.
Yeah, and I would definitely agree. I mean, every person that I've ever known that you've photographed hasn't, when it comes to capturing something so intimate as that, there's a level of, price does not matter. It's the experience and because this is something that's going to last forever. This isn't like a one-time thing that I'm going to use and then throw out. This is like a forever thing. And when you think about it from that perspective, it's an investment in capturing something that can be passed on through generations.
Something that is valuable. And it's so funny because a lot of times I get, for example, moms, and I do families, and the moms, they want all the pictures of the kids, and they're like, oh, don't worry about me. Don't take pictures of me. I've gained all the weight, all the reasons of why they should not be photographed, right? And sometimes we still get them, and say, hey, while we're photographing your kids, let us do your hair, makeup, let you, take it, relax a little bit here. And so once they're done, we bring them in and we do some solos and then some with their family. And it's so funny because when they're looking at images, what images to take and what images to cut, the first ones they cut are their own. And, and I said, just as much as you want all these pictures of your children right now, there's going to be a time when your children are going to look for images of you and they're going to want to have them. What are they going to find? And I get it. I hit for so many years. In my first year of my daughter's life, I'm in 3 pictures with her. The rest of the pictures are by herself or with my husband or with my parents or his parents, and I'm not there. And once she started talking, and she's like, Mommy, why am I not in pictures with you? And I realized just as much as I love all these images of her, she also wants to see me. And she wants me to exist in pictures for her. And so I had to go through the process myself. And so I tried every other year to put myself through the process. It's getting a little bit easier, but it's never easy to trust somebody else to see me and to have my daughter with me and my husband with me, to capture those memories because they're so important.
Yeah. And is there I know you do a lot of different subjects for your photographs and portraits, but is there a favorite type that you absolutely love to do?
That's kind of like asking you to pick your favorite child.
Right.
So I can tell you why I specialize in portraits. So for example, I will not do architectural photography or landscape photography or event photography. It's so funny because a lot of friends at the beginning, they were like, oh, where's your camera? I was like, it stays at the studio because it's my job. I'm like, I have my cell phone. And so that was that. But I love to capture this much of a person. It's my favorite crop. And that can be if I'm working with professionals to do their headshots. That's my favorite shot. If I'm working with a dancer, obviously I like to include more so I can have like that illusion of movement in a still photograph. If I'm working with high school seniors, which I love that age, it's also that when they're becoming who they're going to be, they're becoming an adult. And so again, that area right here, I just will say like, this is my favorite shot to take of every person. And then depending on the genre, I enjoy each one of them. I love, for example, my headshots because I get to hear stories of how they got started, or of the obstacles they overcame, of why their why, which is always fascinating. And so I love that. It's always different. And then with the people that want to do creative work, I love those because they give me 100% creative control. Basically, I ask for a color palette and I ask for 3 words, and then I go and take it from there. And so in that case, they don't do much, and I create the outfits, I paint the backdrops, I style them, I direct the whole thing. So I enjoyed that creative process, but I don't think I could do it every single day. So most of the stuff that I do is headshots, and it's mostly about bringing a person's branding to life and their message to life. And so I enjoy that a lot. And then here and there, I have some breaks of super creative sessions, but they take a lot off of me. It's just like, because, I'm creating everything from scratch. So.
Yeah, I'm envisioning that like almost like putting on a performance or a Broadway show, but you're designing the backdrops and the set design and the costumes and the hair and everything, which are incredible to see. But yeah, that's exhausting to do.
It is exhausting. It is exhausting, but it's so exhilarating at the same time. I had a couple of friends that have brought their high school seniors, and they have stayed there throughout the process. And some parents can, some parents just stay in the lobby. Some parents are more active doing behind the scenes. It's whatever. But they're like, it's so amazing just to watch you create, because I'm creating as I see it evolve and as I see the client respond to certain elements, things are changing. It's a constant dialogue when it comes to the super creative sessions.
So what is it about the capture of the torso to the top of the head? What is it that you love so much about that crop?
So the first part is we're creating here a diamond. And so right here, it's a very strong shape. If I've studied also, paintings from a long time ago. And so there's a lot of hidden geometrical shapes in the images, whether in the positive or the negative space. And so there's some things that you look at an image and you're captivated, and you don't necessarily know why, but your brain is seeing all those things. And that's why it's so taken by that image. So I feel that this is the strongest part of a person, to see who they are. We get that beautiful diamond here, but we also get their gaze, their eyes. To also photograph this, I can use some lenses, but I usually mostly prime lenses, the ones that you are the zoom. So you walk in closer, you walk away if you want more of the image. And so to get this, I'm going to be fairly close to you. And you need to invite me into that space for me to be welcome, and for me and to see actually you take that down that guard. And I feel that that's why I love it, because it's not super close, but it's close enough for me to get to experience who you are.
What has been, and I agree, I think, and when you think about portraits and paintings, before cameras were, you think of the Mona Lisa, and you think of a lot of the portraits that came out of the Renaissance, that they all are that diamond, and you're taken by, because of the eyes and the communication.
They follow you.
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
That presence. Yes,
exactly.
Yes.
And like Mona Lisa, I mean, if it's such a small painting when you actually see it in person. It's like, to be captivated by something that's just on this small canvas. It's amazing. So what has been, you talked about that you realize that you yourself need to get in front of the camera. So what has been, and I know it's difficult to pick one, but what has been one of your most favorite photographs taken of you and your family?
I'll share some of you so you can share them as you create the final video. But it was in 2015, at the end of 2015, at the end of my first year in business, because I opened in January of 2015. So this is December of 2015. And my mentor did her first in-person workshop. So I flew to LA and I did the workshop. It was amazing. And then the last day of the workshop, they had opened it to be photographed by her and her team. And at the time, I was just like, is this not, you shouldn't do it. You haven't lost the baby weight yet. I put all the reasons of why I should not be photographed. And then it got filled up. So when I finally built up the courage to do it, it was full. I was like, okay, well, it's not meant to be. And so then we get there, and the person who was supposed to fill it up didn't show up. And so they were like, we have one more spot. And my arm just went up. I was just like, so, because I had been, working on that for a long time. Uh, and I, the fact that she was able to photograph me as a grown woman, because the last picture that I had of me that I liked was before that photograph that photographer took of my family. So it was about age 6. Before that, I have tons of images of me that I love. Uh, but after that, I didn't have any. And so that she photographed me and that she got into that space and she saw me vulnerable and still was able to pull something beautiful out of that. When she showed me the images, I immediately thought that it was not me, that it didn't look like me, that, that's not me. It looks too pretty. When my husband saw them, he said, this is who I see every single day. And when my daughter saw them, she's like, Mommy, and she wanted to have her own set so she could take them with her everywhere. And and suddenly I realized, this is who you are, and you are worthy of existing in images, not just for yourself but for your loved ones. And so that was the first time that I was photographed and that I was seen. And then 2 years later, or 3 years later, I was photographed again, this time with my daughter and my husband. I had told my husband for our 10th year anniversary. I said, I love giving my clients their album and their box of beautiful family portraits. And every time I see them walk away with those canvases and those albums and those boxes, I'm like, I wish I had some like that. And I said, so all I want for my 10th year anniversary gift is a family portrait. And I found a photographer who does exactly what I do. And she lived in Utah at the time. And so we took a weekend and we flew to her. And I told her, I'm a photographer, but don't treat me like a photographer. On the other side of the camera, I'm just as scared and I'm just as nervous as anybody else. I don't know which way is my best angle. So I want you to direct me just like I do, just like I know you do with every other client. And so she styled us and she got us ready with her team. And those are some of the most amazing images that I've had. So we're about to do it again because she's now going to be 8 and she was 5 at the time. And there's 2 images. There's one where she just is, resting on me. And I have it right here. She's resting right here actually on my face with her eyes closed. And it just melts my heart every time I see it. And then we have another one that I have at the studio. And I usually don't wear red, but the photographer says, oh, this will look amazing on you. And actually, I'm glad that she put us in red because it looks very good. And I'm holding her. And she just looks so fierce and so confident and so protective of her own mom. And it's just amazing that I'm creating this safe space for her to be who she wants to be. So, yes. But, it's still nerve-wracking getting in front of the camera. I don't think it goes away. I will say that about 1% of all the clients that I see love the camera and love to be out, put themselves out there. Most people say, I'd rather go and get a second root canal than have a picture made.
I can understand that. I mean, I was a model when I was a kid, but then once I went through my awkward phase, I no longer liked to be in front of a camera. I was like, I don't look as pretty as I did when I was little, and
it's so crazy because we tell each other, like ourselves, those stories. Nobody else says that.
No, nobody else said anything like that. That was all me. That was it. Yeah. So looking at that first photo, that when you went to the workshop by your mentor, I mean, what versus what you saw then, what do you see now when you look at that photo?
I see softness. I see vulnerability. I see also I see myself in the place where I was, which I was still struggling with my own identity. Okay, are you a real photographer? Are you an actual businesswoman, or are you just playing business? So it's like, I think I see that. And the fact that she was able to capture that, I find it fascinating. But at the same time, I see myself as a beautiful woman. And I don't think I understood that until very recently, And so I'm so thankful, that she was able to capture that, with our, and now I think it's that self-love and self-healing that has allowed me to go through the images from past years that I always hated something about them. And then, look at them and they're like, they're not bad. They're not bad at all. And I realized that it was mostly an inner struggle. And the voices that I had in my head telling me all the things that were wrong, they were really not there.
Yeah, I think that's always been, I feel like something that we all struggle with is in the moment, we don't feel like we're worthy of a photograph. But if we happen to get in front of a camera and then years down the road, we look at that same photograph, we're like, why in the world did I think that I wasn't worthy of being in front of one? I love seeing myself 10 years ago or 15.
Exactly. And you're thankful that you have that memory, that you have that reference. And that's why when I started my business, as much as I wanted to do a lot of the Glam 2.0 portraits, I started with something that was practical and that everybody needed, which was a headshot. And I said, if I can get you in for a headshot, it's not going to be your typical headshot. I'm not just going to stand you against the wall and say cheese and take your picture. When I get to know you, I'm going to prepare you. You're going to have hair and makeup done. We're going to talk about styling and your brand and your message, But I was like, I'm getting them for something that they need. And then eventually, as they go through the process and they enjoy it and they actually love the final product, they may be more willing to exist in images for themselves and for their family. And that's usually how it happens. I have somebody comes for headshots, 2 years down the road, they come for family, or they come for a boudoir session, or they come for mom and daughter, or they bring their mom, and say, I finally convinced her to come and see you so that I have pictures of my elderly mom, because I don't know how long I'm going to have her. And I want to have beautiful images of her and I together. So, it's just giving them enough confidence so they can come back and actually have those images that are going to matter. The headshots are going to get them more business, which is great, which is what I want, but at the end of the day, we want to create images that also speak of your personality and of your story and of the love bonds that you have with the people around you.
What would you say? Because I've personally definitely experienced that the person behind that camera matters a lot to what comes across for me in front of the camera. And it's a very intimate experience. And since unfortunately you can't photograph everybody in the world, which what would you say would be, if someone's looking for a portrait photographer, what are the things to really consider or to talk to them about to find the one that would make you the most comfortable and bring out the best?
I feel that you gotta like their personality. That one of the things, even when I interview people that are going to photograph me, first of all, I go through their work and I see if it's consistent, and even when I teach other photographers, to get their act together. And so the main thing that I said, if we don't clean up your portfolio, you're going to have images from 10 years ago, from 5 years ago, and from now. And some of them are not going to be the same quality. And if the quality is not the same across the board, I'm going to be hesitant to hire you, because I'm going to say, I may catch you on a good day and I'm going to have a great shot, or I may catch you on a bad day and I'm going to end up with this. And if I'm paying a significant amount of money, I don't want to play Russian roulette. So that's number one, consistent in the portfolio, and that you like their portfolio, Number two would be that they're interested in getting to know you. I think that's one of the most important things. If they treat you just like another client, another number on the pipeline, it's different than if they take, even if it's 10-15 minutes for a phone call or a Zoom call or in person, just to see, okay, so who are you? What do you do? How do you want to see yourself? Talk to me about where you want to see these images in your house. What colors are we talking about? What colors really bring out the color of your eyes? Those things that they're really asking questions to get to know you. And then the third one would be, I don't know. I think the first one is quality control. Second one is that they take interest in you. And then the third one probably would be that they also listen And I don't know how you will do that, but sometimes I feel like pushed to have a response, right away. And I tell my clients, okay, so I'm going to send you everything. The moment you pay is the moment your date gets booked. You have 2 or 3 days to think about it. And so I like to give them that room to breathe. Now, obviously, I say, look, I'm usually booked like a month to 2 months in advance. So if you don't take it, somebody else will take it, right? But I like to be able to get to the point where they feel comfortable telling me, I like this and I don't like that. Or like, could you change this? What if like I don't want them to feel like, oh, well, she didn't listen to me, or I wish it had more color here, or I wish it didn't have that over there. I want to please. I want to please. They're spending a significant amount with me, and I want them to love that image. I want them that when every time they see that image, they're like, oh my gosh, I just love it so much. And if they have something they're hanging around, they're like, I don't know. So I feel that, feel comfortable enough to speak your mind. I think that will be the last one.
Well, I absolutely agree with that third one too. I feel like a lot of times we think, well, they know best, but for you to take ownership of feeling comfortable, saying like, this just doesn't feel like me, or I just, and that will come across in the photos too, if you're just feeling uncomfortable and this isn't how I would.
And that's one of the things, because we do the hair and makeup for my clients, and some of them love it, and some of them, oh my gosh, this is too much, or this is not enough. And so I pull them apart and I say, you're not going to hurt my feelings, and you're definitely not going to hurt my team's feelings. How do you feel about this hair and makeup? And then I take a picture and I show them the back, and they're like, oh, I love it. Oh, I want to change this. Great. And so instead of saying to my team, hey, she doesn't like this part, I'm just going to go like, hey, as a photographer, I think that it would be great if you take this up or take this down or add more color or take away, and so I made it as my decision, so that but I feel like they feel safe enough with me to tell me this is not going to work.
Yep. That's amazing. That's such a wonderful thing to have in a photographer that will step up.
And my team is amazing. I have an amazing team, and I've talked to them and I said, this is not about us. This is always about our client. We want them to feel empowered. We want them to feel confident. We want them to feel beautiful. And sometimes we all have different, different meanings of those words. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to hopefully get to know them in the whole hour during doing hair and makeup. As you're talking to them and getting to know them also, they'll feel comfortable enough telling you. But if they don't, then we have a second safety in place.
Right. So with the my second to last question, so since you mentioned, and I know that you do this, that you mentor a lot of up and coming photographers. Looking back on where you were in the very beginning, 2014, and then the 2.5 years to ultimately launch, is there anything when you look back that you wish that you would have done a little bit differently, or wish that you had known back then?
So there's a couple of things. The first one is that if you find somebody that works with you, for example, Subrice Education is the platform that I learned what I do. And I always say, they have over 1,000 videos on posing, on light, on selling, on marketing, on everything you could possibly think. They have it. And so I said, start there and try to build it from there. Second, you either have time or you have money. So if you have the time, take the time to go through all of those things and do it week by week, month by month, whenever you have available time, or if you have the money. In my case, I had some money saved from my previous job. I hired somebody else. I loved my mentor and I love how great she was, how inspirational and everything that I was learning, but I needed somebody to break it down for me into actionable steps. And so I hired this mentor out in Florida, and she helped me put everything in place the way that it needed to be. And so again, she helped me, with pricing, which is something I struggled with because I had no self-value at the time. So I always say, if you want to go faster, go with somebody. If you right now just don't have the funds, then go at it alone, but set yourself goals and say, once a week, I'm going to do this. So definitely that's one of the other things. And then the second thing would be, take action. Even if you don't believe anybody will buy it, even if you think, You know, even if you have all of the negative excuses as to why this won't work, but you know that deep in your heart, this is what you want to do, you know, that this is what you at least give it a try. Take an action every day or every week toward that, you know. And that's how I got to get my website done, my pricing done, my products shipped, everything. By the time I was, you know, 6 months before I opened for business officially, I had everything ready to go. I just failed to launch because I was scared, but at least I had everything in place. And so as I started getting more clients, I already had a system that it was just following one thing at a time. And so take the time. We have time more than anything else. Take the time to create that system, so that when you get overwhelmed or the emotions come in, you know, you still can deflect to that. Okay, this is just the next step I take. And this is the next step I take. And as opposed to, you know, just flying by the seam of your pants or whatever.
No, I agree. In any business, that's the consistency of doing a little bit day by day, taking it in stride is usually the most success that I see somebody do, is they do that exact same strategy.
I will say one more thing. If you're a creative, do not compare yourself to somebody else that is doing something similar to you. If you can see them and use it as inspiration, awesome. But if it's taking your joy away, just don't follow them for a while. You know, I hear a lot with my mentees. You know, they're like, oh, but so and so in my town is doing this, and I was like, okay, and how's that working for them? You know, well, I don't know. Great. Well, you don't need to know. You know, focus on you. Focus on yourself. There's enough business for everybody. Like now in town, there's 2 other photographers who follow the same process, very similar to what I do. Also learned through my mentor, and they're amazing people. I love them. And so, you know, but they have slightly different visuals and slightly different mood, I guess, of their images. So some people are going to be attracted to those, and some people are going to be attracted to mine, and that's perfect. You know, at the end of the day, you want people to go to where they feel like they're going to get the ultimate vision done. And so I feel that that's something that, you know, people just need to know. You know, the truer you are to yourself, the truer you are to your brand message, the truer you are to who you want to be, the easier it will be for you to attract the right people to come to you, and the people that you're not supposed to attract, you'll repel, not in a negative way, but they'll be attracted to somebody else. And I think that that's the way to make it work. You know, it's just comparison is a thief of joy. And if it's something that you struggle with, then, you know, maybe close off all those like social channels just for a second until you just build enough confidence.
And along those lines, I think a lot of times we have the tendency of comparing someone's year 5 to our month 1 and thinking, oh, we need to be there. It's like, no, this was 5 years in the making. You don't
yes.
need to be
and
there.
Like I said, you know, nothing saw the light of the day until 2.5 years later.
Yeah.
So it seems like, oh, in 1 month you already had. I'm like, yes, but for 2.5 years I was doing all the behind the scenes work. Exactly. You know, and social media, you see the highlight reel, you don't see the day-to-day grinding. So
exactly. So my last question, and I love asking this, I ask every woman, but looking out, you know, 40, 50, 60 years in the future, and you looking back at your life, what is ultimately the legacy that you hope to leave behind?
That's a really good question. I feel that the legacy that I want to leave behind is that of empowerment and confidence in all the people that I photographed. I want them, you know, I feel maybe it's because of my religious background that I feel that we were all created in the creator's image, and that we all have that divinity within us, and that my job as a photographer is to capture that. I want them to see that divinity within themselves, you know, and I've had clients that said, Saray, you know what? 5 years ago when I came, you captured the person that I wanted to be 5 years from then. And I'm there now, and I'm ready to upgrade. And so it's like, I want them to have tangible proof of just how valuable and how wonderful and how beautiful they are. And that's it.
That's beautiful. It doesn't have to be any more complicated than that. Well, thank you so much for your time and for everything that you shared with us, Saray. I'd love for you to share with everyone the best ways for them to connect with your work and to see everything that you do.
Yes. So my Instagram is Taylor-Roman Portraits, and that's for my creative work. My other Instagram account for my headshots, it's Not Your Office Headshot, because it isn't. And so on those two places, on Facebook and Instagram, you can find me. And then my website is www.taylorroman.com.
Great. Well, thank you so much again. I really loved our discussion. I really appreciate you sharing with all of us.
Thank you so much. I really appreciated you having me here. You're so easy to talk to. So that's awesome.
Good.
I was kind of nervous and I was like, So
I try to be as easy to talk to as possible.
You are. You're really good. So thank you.
Now that you know Saray's origin story, tune in to our next episode where we unfold the journey she has been on since. This episode of She Speaks is brought to you by our amazing partners at First Horizon Bank. She Speaks is produced, edited, and scored by the very talented Travis Tench at Oak Hill Audio. If you loved the episode you just heard and want to support Let Her Speak's mission of elevating real women's stories, don't forget to follow, subscribe, and share at Let Her Speak USA. Together, we will make our voices heard.